All right, what's up, guys? Welcome into Good Morning Lambo. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. You can email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us 865-658-5824. Flying solo as of the moment. I'm sure Tim may hop in here in a second as soon as he rolls out of bed and grabs a cup of coffee. But before we get started, I know I see the chat is already filling up. And just give a quick shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate y'all. We got Patrick in the house. We've got Nick McSwain in here. Crossfire, good to see you, buddy. Damon Stewart in the house. Packers Kingdom. Nick McSwain. Chris in. What's up, buddy? Good morning to you. Ready to get in here and talk some ball with you guys. Matter of fact, let's just start with the chat, see what's on everybody's mind. Damon Stewart in the chat says, the amount of trash talk I woke up to this morning is historic. I'm fired up. It's been wild. There's no doubt about it. And, the Lions fans for the longest time, and me and Tim have had a lot of conversations about this. Obviously, he's went through quite a few Lions games, and he has always been of the opinion the Lions fans are scum. And I always kind of pushed back a little bit like, man, I don't know. I mean, they're a beat-up organization. They haven't ever won anything. It was kind of like, you like to see them doing good those first couple years that Dan Campbell was there, right? Well, now what you're seeing with the Lions fans is absolutely hilarious because they're acting like they literally run the NFL. They've never won a championship. They've never won a conference championship. Lord knows, what their playoff record is, and I'm not going to even take the time to dig it up. But, like even Bears fans, you run into some Bears fans. I've always had kind of this mutual respect with Bears fans, although they're a toxic group too. Listen, there's toxic Packer fans as well. Vikings have always been the fan base that I dislike the most because they were kind of like the Lions were, when the Vikings went on their little run there roughly 10 years ago, and they were competing with the Packers really, really heavily in the North, and they still couldn't get over the hump, still haven't won a championship, and they act like they've actually done something. But the Lions have definitely replaced that now, and you kind of got to sit back, hindsight, and say, okay, well, let's do a self-evaluation. Is it because they're winning, Clayton, that you don't like them? No, it's not, because it's not so much whether you're winning or losing, it's how you do it. And, man, they are a toxic fan base. I'm glad it finally got noticed. And the reason it's true is you look around the other fan bases chiming in on this officiating stuff, and it wasn't just Packer fans. I think that's why the Lions fans are so bitter. I think that's why they're so aggravated about the whole situation is they know it. They seen it on tape, right? You can't watch that game and not come away thinking, man, did they catch every single break with the officiating? Wow. But also other fan bases, other podcasts, like Ryan was talking about, there was a Philly podcast. There was another one, San Francisco 49ers podcast guy actually chimed in, and everyone notices it. Former NFL quarterback Chase Daniel seen it, right? There was somebody, Dan Orlovsky, former Detroit Lions quarterback, Dan Orlovsky's talking about it. It's so, I think that's what's got them so worked up is they're trying to hide it. They're trying to pretend as if, no, that wasn't the case, and everybody under the sun's pointing it out, and that is a fun thing to experience, to see them squirm like that. We actually had a Lions podcaster comment on Christian Watson's dad's tweet yesterday, I think it was. I don't know if you guys seen this. Absolutely hilarious. Basically said that it's amazing how cheeseheads are going out of their way to prove how stupid they are at football and how they lack knowledge in real football and this and that. Christian Watson's dad's like, but I played in the league. What the hell are you talking about? The guy had no clue that it was an NFL player that he was telling. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to be real here. Listen, I'm overweight. I can say this. You have this chunker, right, sitting behind a microphone telling a former NFL player he doesn't know football. Let that sink in. And then once he finds out he's a former player, then he starts calling him Unc and trying to kiss his ass and this and that. And it's just like, man, you guys are a pathetic fan base. And Eminem deserves you and you deserve Eminem. As we all know, Eminem, you didn't even know he's a Detroit Lions fan forever. All of a sudden they started winning, and boy, he's up in the box taking selfies and this and that. They are definitely a fair weather fan base. And I know there's some hardcore die-hard fans that have been fans through the dark years and this and that. And they're probably the less vocal ones. I hate it for them, but You guys are quickly becoming the most hated franchise and fan base in all of football, and I absolutely love it. So keep up the good work there for sure. So I'm sure that's what Damon was talking about with the trash talk. Well, let's see here. Packers Kingdom says, good morning. I believe the refs got a call from Vegas saying don't make noticeable but favor lines with the penalties. I don't care what it is. We need a line in Chiefs Super Bowl. It's all about money. Again, man, I try to stay away from these conversations, Packers Kingdom, because I've always been the guy to push back on that and go, no, it ain't. Come on, guys. This is conspiracy and blah, blah, blah. And there's been articles written and former players come out and say it. Now, it's been all but proven that in the 70s and 80s, there was definitely point shaving and things like that, right? And hopefully they've cleaned that up out of the game. But I'm telling you, man, they are not doing themselves a favor as a league when you watch that game. I think the one that really kind of triggered everyone to feel like Packers Kingdom here is the offensive pass interference call on Christian Watson. Listen, if you throw that flag, I get it. On the surface, if I'm official and I see Christian Watson, I'm looking from the back left area, and I see him running his route, and he just runs over a DB, right? In the moment, heck yeah, throw the flag, right? Like, okay, I see it. Now, do I think it was a penalty? No. Christian Watson has the right to run his route. It's not Christian Watson's job as he's running his route to look up at a defender and go, oh, I've got to dodge him. It's actually the opposite. The defender, let me put it this way. If the rule suggested that the wide receiver doesn't have the right to run his route, okay, then all a defender has to do every single play is not look at that receiver kind of side-eye him and just run into him every time. Now, why don't you see that in the NFL? Because that is called pass interference, right? So, with that being said, the biggest issue with that penalty, and the reason that all these other fan bases too are perking their eyes up like, holy cow, is they make contact, right? The officials don't do a thing. And this is what Dan Orlovsky pointed out. And I'm glad he created that video. I'm surprised the NFL, seeing that he works for ESPN. ESPN has such a huge partnership with the NFL. I'm surprised they haven't made him take it down. He's counted how many seconds, or he just named it off. He said, there's the contact, and he waited and waited and waited and waited. Now the penalty flags. And the way it worked too was like the contact, bang, they hit. Then Josh Jacobs catches the pass, still no flag. And then Josh Jacobs runs it in for a touchdown. And then 2 or 3 officials throw a flag. I've seen that, and I'm like, boys, it is getting more and more difficult to defend against people like Packers Kingdom who are saying, hey, man, this kind of seemed like the little fishy here. I don't want to be that dude, but boy, they are bringing all kinds of attention to themselves. They really are as a league. And obviously the big talking point of the officiating and the fact that these guys aren't full-time employees. It's like, what the hell? Why are we dragging our feet with that? Why not invest all the resources in getting the call right? I mean, it's like on the penalties as well. Why not make that reviewable? You know what I'm saying? Like if a coach sees, hey, they held us, like Keyshawn Nixon busting through the line, the guys got him by the back of the collar. You guys seen that screen grab, right? And by the way, it ended up being a touchdown pass, and it went right through the throwing lane of where Keyshawn would have been in Jared Goff's face. So we can get pissed at Jeff Hafley and say he called a bad game and this and that. The reality is, in that specific play, it was the right call because Keyshawn came free and he was going to be right in the throwing lane. He would not have been able to deliver that dig in the back of the end zone. But why was he able to do it? Because a Lions offensive lineman grabbed Keyshawn by the back of the collar on his way through. And it's not just like I'm blocking him and got a hold of him, kind of hooked him. You can see the offensive lineman's arms completely stretched out, right? Like he is completely stretched out, reaching across 2 other players with his hand on Keyshawn's collar. So that's another example right there, right? Nick McSwain in the chat says, Lions fans acting like the refs screwed them over the bad penalties too. LOL. It's hilarious because that's immediately the argument. I'm telling you, if you guys pay attention on Twitter to these Lions fans, it was originally cry more, cry more, cry more. And then all these other fan bases came in from the rest of the league, and all these other content creators came in from the rest of the league and started pointing it out. Then it immediately shifts to, okay, what's the old, I won't say the name of the group that coined it, but because it is we just don't want to relive that part in history, obviously, but it was, accuse your enemies for which you're guilty, right? They immediately shifted to that, all right, let's try to flip this around, which is hilarious. So, anybody who's got 2 eyes and a couple brain cells to rub together knows that pretty much every questionable call in that game went in favor of the Lions. Nick McSwain also said, I feel like the defense is kind of in no man's land. Struggle getting pressure with 4, but when they bring extra, they can't get home and cornerbacks get carved up. Yeah, here I think one big misconception here, Nick, and this is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is the gospel, and you guys tell me if you disagree. Okay, I see your super chat, Josh. I'm gonna get to it, buddy. Let me finish this real quick. People have this misconception. I'm not saying it's you, Nick. I'm just saying in general, and I've been as guilty as anyone at it in the past too, before I really started diving into the tape and understand the nuances of each specific defense. It's like we think there's this perfect defense out there, right? And the reality is there's not. Like you can play man coverage. Okay, what does man coverage do for you? Man coverage will neutralize the passing aspect of the RPO game, right? If you've got a really good man cover corner or a group of man cover corners like Belichick did when they were on their dynastic run there, you can play bump and run at the line, right? And you can really, what that allows you to do is bring extra pressure from other places because the quarterback's going to drop back and he sees his 1 and 2 read and they're being pressed and just covered like blankets. Next thing you know, the pass rush is on you, right? But even when you play that, right, there's a negative aspect to it too. It can be vulnerable against the run, especially outside stretch plays. And one of the reasons why I feel like Bill Belichick had a lot of success playing man and press man during their dynasty run there is because in the past, what's happened, the stretch run wasn't as popular. When Belichick was winning those championships there in the early 2000s, the outside zone run had kind of went away from football touch, and everybody was running power. They were running gap scheme stuff, all that, right? So as time goes on, offenses adapt, and you start to run outside, and that makes it more vulnerable, okay, against man coverage too. So the point of that is it doesn't matter what the defense is called. There's weak spots in it, okay? And that's why it's important to mix and match your defense and obviously play to your strengths. That should be the number one goal. And you've got to be mentally prepared for game planning against the other team. So if we play man coverage, I just told you, it's easier to run on man coverage, okay? And another thing too is if you're playing cover one man, which typically that's what man coverage is, middle field close, cover one man, deep safety, you might have a hole, you might have a robber, but what that means is you can run crossers and in the second window, explosive play central because those corners underneath are playing outside leverage, trying to funnel everything in the middle. You're not going into that strength. You're actually running through that strength into kind of that mid to third level area on the opposite side of the field. So the point of that is there's weaknesses in every defense. So when you say we're kind of in no man's land, you struggle getting pressure with 4, but when you bring extra, they hit home. All that is true. It is. And that's where it comes down to the players have to recognize in real time and reaction. And this is called FBI. They've got to know post-snap, okay, here's the concept that's coming. Here's the combination that they're about to hit us with, right? Tim, you just jump in whenever you're ready, buddy. So that you got to know what combo they're bringing at you. So, like, for example, when they kept hitting the digs, right? They kept hitting the digs in that defense. Most of the time we were in a cover 2. Well, we talked about in cover 2, especially we like to run a lot of Tampa, where one defender will follow the 2 or the 3 down the seam. You got guys playing underneath whether it's the mock or the wheel that's playing the Tampa aspect of the defense. As they hit the seam, right? Guess what that does? You walk him out and you open up the area in the back. So there was a couple times, like with Quay, he didn't sink far enough to cover the dig, right? And he was looking at the other guy like, why didn't you cover that? Well, it just comes down to what the specific call was. And we can break down each individual play and look at it and go, okay, yeah, that's probably his fault, right? That's probably McDuffie's fault, or that's Quay's fault, or right here it's Bullard, whoever it may be. But there's no perfect defense out there is the moral of the story, really. Josh Martin with the super chat. Appreciate you, buddy. Says even Bears and Vikings said the refs messed up. There you go. I'm telling you, man, every fan base in the NFL is like piling on the Lions right now, and it's hilarious because again they're in such denial that no, the officiating was just not perfect, and it is cool to see pretty much everyone else in the NFL other than NFL fans kind of come together and be like, hey, y'all are acting like a bunch of dumbasses. So it's really that simple. Tim joins us now. Speaking of people who aren't dumbasses, this is the brains of the operation here. Tim, how you doing, Bubba?
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm the brains. How many times are you going to come to my press conference late?
Hey, just for the record,
I just woke up.
Tim did that to himself. All right, I didn't do that. Now you're good.
That was all me.
I appreciate you jumping in, man. Listen, it's a volunteer army, and anytime you get on your top ball, man, I appreciate it.
I love it. Are we still talking refs?
Yeah, man. The conversation got started. Folks mentioning that it's getting pretty heated on Twitter. It's been heated on Twitter, and it's just you're seeing other fan bases, other podcasters kind of step in place of the Packers, like pointing out the lines, like, bro, you're ignorant if you think that those calls went your way or didn't go your way. But It is what it is. Again, we're going to talk about what people want to talk about in here, and it got brought up, so we hit on it. Let's see here. Packers Kingdom. Y'all see Nixon get held. That's a clear sack. That's the one we were just talking about, the one grabbing by the collar. Could have been a horse collar, too, to be honest with you. This is wild. Chris Ian says lack of pressure is why we lost the game, in my opinion. It definitely didn't help, right? Where it was, I think Gary got the only sack on the day. I know he led the team in pressures, too, according to NFL Pro with the GPS tracking and all that. Kenny had a better game. But when you look at that, this is what's so difficult for me, Tim, is like one of the things I really enjoy doing, and it's why I like doing Chalk Talk, which I got a lot of work to do to get that video ready tonight. One of the reasons why I like doing Chalk Talk is it allows me to remove the emotion and really dig into what happened. Why did it happen? Why did we lose this game? Right. And you start with the glaring, obvious things, right? Turnover differential. No, we were tied. Middle eight. No, the middle eight could not have worked out any better. Matt LaFleur deferring to the second half. That's what we're talking about, right? Coming out in the second half, Keyshawn Nixon, what did he do? Gets the interception, sets us up to score in the middle eight. You now have control over the game. If you looked at ESPN's chart and it shows like the percentage chance of winning, that's when the Packers finally cracked in, right? And it's all right. We're in the driver's seat. So what happened? We didn't turn the ball over again, right? We have more explosives. The two things that I come up with when I watch the tape, and I've watched it now 4 times. I've been through this 4 times now. What I come up with is the first down passing is really what put us behind. So the play calling on first down. Now, we say play calling, but Jordan could have canned, right? I didn't pay that close attention. Like, how many times did he can out of a run to a pass? And, Tim, I know you were standing on the table about this. We need to run damn football, right?
Yep.
So the passing, and the other thing, man, as bad as I hate to be that guy, it's the officiating. It's all over the tape. Every time the Lions needed something to go in their favor, they looked up and got a call. It's really that simple.
Yeah, it's WWE out there, bro. For real. Like, I think we all need to stop pretending that there's any objectivity at all. That this is clearly by design. There's intent behind this. We'll just say it that way. And we're not crying about it because they screw every other team in this league too. There's a handful of darling teams, and then there's teams that have to play against their opponent and the officials. Just sucks. Yeah.
And again, Matt LaFleur handled it the right way, right? First of all, his team sees him getting fired up on the sideline. Like, he's trying to make sure they know, look, I see what's going on, boys. Let's keep fighting. His whole approach is you got to play through it. And it's really you've got to be so damn good that they can't have an impact on the game, whether it's intentional or not, right? And again, I'm not the flat earther over here going, hey, yeah, I think 90% that fix was in. But there's definitely some persuasion that is going on.
Yeah, this league tries to influence outcomes of games through their officiating. That's why we talk ad nauseum about, well, they got a chip in the ball and we got all this technology. They don't want to use technology. They want to be able to manipulate the game. If they use the technology too much, then it'll be obvious that they're cheating. You know what I mean? So I think they like this. They like to be able to be able to influence the outcome of a game. Like I said, the refs in the NFL are very similar to the guy in the ring in wrestling. That's all I'm going to say.
I love that you said wrestling too, because that's the way I grew up here.
Wrestling,
yeah. In the South, man.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, let's see here. J. Cole in the chat says it's entertainment at the end of the day. The refs know what they're doing. I think that's a pretty fair statement. And I think someone said, Ryan pointed out on his podcast, awesome podcast too, by the way. And it's great when you hear Ryan talking about the officials.
Oh, you know it's bad.
You know something's up. Because Ryan's always that guy. Like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. And I'm the same way. Like, I don't want to be that dude. But I am that dude on Twitter, and I'll tell you why. Imagine if no one tweeted about all the BS calls. Imagine that. Imagine a world where no one complained about that on Sunday or on Thursday. No one said a thing, and it was just the Lions won. That was it. Then imagine how many more calls they're going to get. The more light we shine on it as a fan base, and that's exactly what Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff do. They put together a highlight reel or a low light reel of, hey, you missed this one, you missed this one, you missed this one. You send it into the league and you make them aware. Like, remember last week, what did Dan Campbell talk about? He talked to the officials about Caleb Williams and told them, we're going to light his ass up on the sideline when he tries to tippy-toe down the sideline, and you guys better be ready for it because it's not a penalty. He's persuading the officials to let them know, look, here's what they've been doing. Watch the tape. They're bending the rules, and you better not flag us for it, right? So I say that because it's obvious Dan Campbell is really, really in the ears of the official in that regard, and good for him. That's good coaching, making sure that they're aware to get his team the utmost respect on the field and ability to capitalize on those calls. But, man, at the end of the day, it's a black eye on the league. That game should have been, it should have been two of the best teams in the league, and the Lions are the better team, and the Packers maybe are still 1 year away. That could be, I could see some fans saying that. I could kind of see that. It kind of feels like Favre's second year as a starter if you go back and look at, how they played and their standings and everything. But that's not what we're talking about because it was so blatantly obvious with the flags.
It's sad. And, coaches get paid, players get paid. There's money for everyone in this league, except apparently the officials. The league just doesn't take it seriously enough, I don't think. Why are these guys, they're part-time employees, let's be honest, and I don't know. I've had a part-time job before. I'm going to go there and do my bare minimum and take my ass home, right? I'm not going to really invest into the job, so it's just sad.
And the conversation always steers toward, we're going to move on now. And again, I want to honor what people want to talk about in the chat. That's why we're doing this. But it's the majority of the time people will respond to that and go, the NFL's got all this money. Why don't they just spend all this money on the officials, the extra money, and make it full time and this and that? Ask yourself why. The money's there, right? Why? I'll just leave it at that. Sometimes everything's right there in front of your face, right? The truth's right in front of your face. But Packers Kingdom in the chat says, we need to get Gary some help. We need a monster 3 tech and another edge and linebacker and corner and yeah. Listen, you still – someone pointed out – I think it might have been Andy Herman on Twitter pointed out, and I thought it was a great tweet. He said something along the lines of, the first year that Hafley comes in to run this defense, look at the pieces you put in place, right? You go out and you get McKinney and you bring him in on defense, right? And he has just been like, man, that's arguably the best player on the defensive side of the ball. It's obvious that the players that are on this roster that we drafted are not, they weren't drafted to run this defense. Now, some would say, hell, Clayton, they couldn't run the 34. I'm with you. I got you. The Joe Barry defense. Every year, the defense is ranked about the same. Joe Barry, his last 2 years, he improved. Many people don't even understand that his defense got better. The first year, it was great, right? And then the second year, it took a slide back. And then the third year, it improved again. So the run defense got better. The pass defense took a little bit of a step back in the final year, but you could tell, again, it goes back to our original conversation that there's no perfect defense. You got to pick and choose. What are we taking away? And you got to try to make the other team play left-handed and ask your guys in specific situations to rise to the occasion. You're going to be outnumbered here. You got to up your game. So I think what Andy was saying, and I think it's a great point. It kind of goes hand in hand with what Packers Kingdom's saying here. This offseason, you got to add a couple more pieces. And that's what I was talking about. Like, we got to get out of this mindset of our first-round pick. Okay. You guys know I got so aggravated when Joe Barry was here because it's like there's this defense is way too talented. He's underperforming. underperforming, right? And it's like, how do we know all those first-round picks are good football players? You know what I'm saying? What have they shown to say, yes, they're a good football player? Like Devontae White is a great pass rusher. I say a very good pass rusher. But we seen him again. Did you see the missed tackle in the backfield this last game? That's the pro and the con to what he does, right? So same thing with Kenny. Like with Kenny, missed tackle percentage has always been high over the last 3 or 4 years. Don't matter what defense you're calling, okay? So you got to try to put these guys in a position where they can kind of accentuate what they do well. And, that's typically how that works. So let me just take care of that right now. I'm going to tell you this, man. We have a multitude. I'm going to unmark that, Tim. That's all right. We got a couple of different.
Oh, I wanted to laugh at him. I wanted to make him look stupid.
I know you did, but this dude is the same guy that's just constantly commenting. When the Packers win, you don't hear from him.
Yeah.
When the Packers lose, it's just
right. And then he's a fan, but he's a Packers fan, right?
Oh, absolutely. Which we know there's trolls out there from other fan bases too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Having the comments, but when I get feedback, from listeners going, Clayton, stop feeding the trolls, man. Just stop commenting on it. That's why I'm at the point where I'm like, hey,
all right, Chuck. See you later.
Yeah. Take care, Bob. Hope you find a team to root for, or hope your real team is playing well. So, anyway,
I'm with you on this on the draft picks. I'm a big proponent of I don't give a rat's ass what round you're picked in once you're in the league. I just don't care. We hear it all the time. Well, he's a first round pick, or he's so what? Who the hell cares? We've seen 7th round. We've seen undrafted guys come into this league and make noise. Stop. Just stop. But clearly, you're right, Clay. There's clearly in these, and it's not just the Packers. There's a lot of franchises that they put an emphasis on the guys that they draft, and they want them to see the field. And hey, I can understand that, right? You're a business owner. You don't hire someone to not work, right? You want them to work. So I get it. But I think, if you've got somebody that's not performing, I think it's, not unrealistic to evaluate what they're doing at the pro level and stop living off the reputation from, 2 or 3 years in college and, where they were drafted. That's what the draft is, right? You scout, you do the best you can. And then there's a lot of hype. We see guys that are projected to go 1 and then they fall in the draft because of, rumors or, hearsay, whatever. The draft is the draft. It is what it is. I don't care that Quay Walker is a first round pick. You're right. Let's evaluate the last 2.5 years of his career in the NFL when we're judging a player. That's how I feel.
Yeah, and one of the issues is when you draft someone that high, it's like, man, listen, we know what he can do. Got to get him out there. And I just disagree with that. Like Belichick and I keep referring back to that, guys, because he's the greatest of all time. Okay, like he's the dude who's got the most pelts on the wall. That guy think of some of his best players. Obviously, Tom Brady. It's amazing how Tom Brady, some people try to give Tom Brady all the credit, but they don't give Belichick the credit for drafting Tom Brady when no one else in the league did, right?
True.
But Tom Brady, late round pick, right? Who's another player that you think of when you think of all of those Super Bowl wins? And it's hard to think of one because there's been so many. Like, think of their interior defensive linemen. For the longest time, you remember Vince Wilfork, right?
Oh, he was monster.
Yeah, that was a guy. Well, before
That's a scary guy. I would cross the street if I saw that dude walking towards me. He's right. Intimidating dude for sure.
And before him, a player they traded away, which was a fan favorite, was Richard Seymour. They traded Richard Seymour away, and there's NFL Films footage of this behind the scenes. Belichick traded him away so they could re-sign Wilfork. Yep. Like being able to turn the page and plug another piece in. Another one, when you think of like their most clutch receiver in playoff history, it's Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman was a quarterback at Kent State, if I remember correctly.
Yep. And
he comes in as I don't even know if I think he was a draft pick. It might have been a 7th round pick. He may have been undrafted. And they plug him into the slot and put him at kick return. He ends up being a borderline Hall of Famer, right? That's another example right there. Like you can go on and on and on. Slater, I think his name's Matthew Slater, player that most people don't even know about. That dude won Special Teams Player of the Year multiple times. He was their gunner. absolute dog in special teams, and they won many games by controlling special teams and field position. My point is, the thing that Belichick always did well was he didn't fall in love with one player. For God's sakes, they re-signed Drew Bledsoe to the most expensive contract in NFL history at the time, and then 1 year later traded him because Tom Brady was the dude. You know how easy it would have been to go, oh man, that makes me look like a moron if I trade away this guy after I thought he was the dude. Doesn't matter. It's all about how do you win games right now in this moment. And I think that is one thing that we've screwed up with is we're trying to fit these square pegs in a round hole. Think of Demarius Randall. Think of Ha Clinton Dix. Think of Ahmad Carroll back in the day when I first became a fan. Think of all these players that's come. Nick Perry. You guys remember Nick Perry, first-round pick? Got to get him on the field, boys.
Darnell Savage.
This is the guy opposite of Clay Matthews and Nick Perry that's just he's going to be the bread to the butter, right? Of Clay Matthews, and you knew after 1 year, hey, this dude, he is not trained. It doesn't mean he's bad at football. It just means he's not good enough to play at a consistent level in the NFL. And how many years did we continue to put him out there? That's what I'm saying as an organization. We got to adjust something and go, okay, look, just because it's a first-round pick doesn't mean he needs to be on the damn field. And we've seen it with, like you said just now, Tim, we've seen it with Darnell Savage, right? And we're seeing it again right now with Eric Stokes. Now, this is the last year of Stokes' contract, obviously, but it's like, why is he out there? It doesn't mean he's a bad person. I'm not trying to dog on him, but he does not give you the best chance to win that football game. And like Aaron Negler and a couple other people pointed out too, it's like, listen, you put Stokes out there, how much different is it going to be from Eric Stokes to Carrington Valentine? Forget that Carrington Valentine, I think we would all agree, can play better than Stokes. But if it is worse, how much worse can it be than what you've seen in that goal line situation where Eric Stokes was on freaking skates and he didn't know whether to crap or go blind, so he closed one eye and farted and was trying to hold on to it was like, if you had a teaching tape of here's how to not play man coverage in a goal line situation, put that one on, boy. You don't. What you
want to do is you want to start backpedaling and shuffling your feet as soon as the ball snapped.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. and we know that on tape. Here's a perfect example of kind of how they were attacking, like what Ron says here. I'm going to get sidetracked. Tim, remind me here in a second when I go, what was I going to talk about? Outside breaking routes inside the 5 is what the Lions ran, okay? He says, Clayton, focusing on the two things they did well, crossers behind linebackers, and when linebackers drop deeper than screens, they seem to know when to call each. And he said, I meant to add a question. Is there a plan to counter? I'll tell you what the plan is, Ron. In those situations, you can say key in on the screen. But when you key in on that screen, then that's going to take your focus away from those digs behind you. Listen, Ben Johnson is going to be a head coach. Ben Johnson's one of the best OCs in the game, probably is the best offensive coordinator in the game right now. So he knows, okay, here's how we need to hammer this out. Let's run a rock. Let's run play action screens where they have to pull up on the back. And then when they realize, oh, it's play action, now they're backpedaling. Oh, crap, it's actually a screen. You see what I'm saying? There's like multi-levels to it, and there's counters in there. Now, back to what I asked you to remind me about, Tim, I actually remembered. I've got my coffee this morning. We're good to go. One of the things they had on tape that I noticed and many other people noticed, inside the 5, they love passing outside. They love outbreakers, right? One of the reasons it's a very, very safe throw. Well, you guys remember the first meeting earlier this year with the Lions, they used the F motion. I call it F motion. They may call it something else, but in Matt LaFleur's offense, it'd be an F motion. Over with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keyshawn followed him. You guys remember? Quick little out route, right? He like a little stutter in the out, back shoulder throw. Keyshawn was all over it. He just didn't get his head around to bat the ball down. You watch that play and go, Keyshawn can't play it much better than that other than get your hand up and get, he was right on him. Like white on rice. Now, let's go back to the Eric Stokes play. On that play there, we don't know what the DC told him, but I know the DC didn't tell him to immediately immediately backpedal, wait for him to make his move, and then you just trail him. That's not part of the plan. So we put on tape, they like to run those outbreakers. What I'm getting at is if I had seen Stokes press at the line and shift outside, I would have been like, hey, guys, that's Ben Johnson playing chess. They've been hammering those outbreakers inside the 5. But that's not even what you've seen. It was just like he just looked lost. And again, this isn't like a new thing with Stokes. This just continues to happen. And it like with Quay, you guys know I was really down on Quay. And I'm still not sold on, hey, he's the Mike Backer of the future. I'm not in that crowd, and I see a bunch of guys on Twitter, and that's awesome. I want to get to that point because I think he's a good dude and he's athletic freak, obviously. But I was negative, and then the last couple of games you've seen him kind of pop, and you go, oh, okay, you're showing me something now. Stokes has never shown that. Just like Savage never showed that after those couple early years. I think he had one good year, right, in the Pettin defense. That's how far back it was. And it's like you got to be willing to admit you made a mistake with that pick. That's it. So
yeah, I like the fact that we don't bail on guys right away. Don't get me wrong, right? You draft a guy, they're gonna develop, they're gonna struggle, they're gonna fight through adversity. Maybe injuries. Look at Eric Stokes and the injuries he's fought through just to even see the field again. I understand that, and I respect that. But then there's the other end of the spectrum, right, where you're hanging on too long, and you're not getting production, and guys look confused, and they haven't stepped to that next level, and it's frustrating when they're, especially when they're seeing the field during like crucial situations, right? You're talking about like a goal line snap like that. Yeah, not a good look.
Yeah, Josh Martin, I see your super chat, but I'm gonna get to it in a second. I didn't answer Ron's question here like an idiot. But so like focus on the two things they did well, blah, blah, blah. How would you counter that is the question, right? The counter to it is you can put emphasis on one or two things. Bill Belichick 101, do your job. What's the 1, 2, maybe 3 things that we need you to do, right? So let's say going into the game plan, they didn't – I don't remember them screening us a lot in the first game. I could be wrong. I don't remember a lot of screen passes in that first game. Okay. So if that wasn't on tape and you're watching the tape and you're going into the game, how do you stop them? I guarantee it was, hey, look, we need to really control the run. Okay. So when you control the run, your backers are pulled up. You can hammer those digs in the backside. If you guys go back and watch Chalk Talk and mostly wins too that we've had this year, 2 or 3 wins in a row, I'm going, there's the space that you need to attack when we're running Tampa 2. Like I'm giving the answer from the opponent's perspective of, hey, here's how you attack that. And that's exactly what Ben Johnson did. Stretch it vertically with a 2 or 3, hammer a dig underneath. You're walking the mock out in Tampa, and you got this huge void underneath. And if you add in a little spot, a little spacing underneath as well, that linebacker's got to choose. Do I fade back and make sure the dig isn't there? And they don't have eyes in the back of their head either. Keep that in mind, right? Do I fade back and protect the dig and them just dink and dunk us? How many times does that happen, 10? And us as fan bases, me included, go, what the hell are we doing? Attack the football, right? Well, that backer, I'm guaranteeing you, is also thinking there might be a dig behind me, okay? Yeah. And the answer to your question, Ron, is you need better football players. It's that simple. Like the greats in the game, they cover that. They just do. Fred Warner has no problem with identifying, and part of it's film study, part of it's athleticism, and part of it is just reading and reacting with true real-time FBI. Like Fred Warner on that play, he's not just coming to the line and going, okay, if they run a dig behind me, I'm going to cover the dig instead of the spot underneath, right? But I guarantee you what he is doing is he watched tape all week and said, okay, when they're in 2x2s, they're going to try to hit the dig with an out. And they're conveying that to your curl flat defender, whether it's Keyshawn or your safety or whoever. Hey, look, they might have a code where tango. That means, okay, you're covering the curl flat. Watch for the curl flat. They're in a 2x2 set. We talked about this. This is film study, right? And then when they go to a 3x1 and you got 3 on that side, then he may know this is where they like to stretch it out vertically with the 2, hammer the dig in behind, and they might run a little fake slant, a little slurl, and a spot play there underneath. And you're conveying that. The great players do that. And again, I don't think anybody here is saying Quay Walker is a top 3 or a top 5 linebacker. Tim's his biggest fan on the show. I can guarantee you that. And Tim, you've never said he's a top 5 linebacker, right? Yep. So
I'm just not going to dog him. People act like he's terrible, and he's not. Right. So.
And I've seen enough improvement this year where it's given me a little bit of hope, but now I'm like to the point where, Tim, you're his biggest fan. Let me ask you this. Who would you rather have, Quay Walker or Fred Warner?
Probably Fred Warner. If he's not lying about a foot injury. Yeah, I would take a healthy Fred Warner.
Yeah.
For sure.
So the point of that is you should always, if you see a weak spot, it doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like the pass rush has been a weak spot, and people were screaming, "You need to bench Gary. You need to bench Gary." And I'm like, bro, he's leading the team in pressures and sacks. What the hell are we talking about? It's like this overly emotional reaction, right? Of, okay, it's somebody's fault, and we got to can them. No, you say, okay, we're having a down year. There's our biggest asset. How do we add to it? And that's what someone in the chat just a second ago was saying, like, hey, we need to add a pass rusher opposite, whether it's a 3-tech or another edge defender. And you're trying to do that with LVN with the 13th overall pick. The issue is coming out of college, everybody was saying high upside, but low experience. What's that? That equates to it's going to take time to develop. I hate that. I hate it in the first round, because your first rounder should be someone who can contribute. And the reason I say that is because if you're not going to find someone who can immediately contribute in the first round, guess what you could do? You could trade that first rounder for someone who can immediately contribute. And that's kind of the point I was getting to, was either trade out of the first and take multiple swings so you can find another Evan Williams, you can find another Zach Tom, you can find another one of these guys, you got multiple swings at it, or give up that pick for someone that you know is a damn good football player. You know, it's that simple. Minnesota's defense took a pretty good jump this year, and I'm trying to think of the Blake Cashman. You guys remember in free agency? We were talking about Blake Cashman. Another one, Bobby Wagner. Remember we talked about Bobby Wagner and people laughed? Bobby Wagner playing his ass off. Where's he, in Washington, I think it is? He's back with Dan Campbell. Or not Dan Campbell, Dan Quinn. Thank you, Tim. I always mess his name up. So imagine
a rare example of a defensive-minded head coach with finding success.
Yes.
You know, we always talk about that, right? We'd rather have an offensive guru as our head coach. Certainly looking at Washington, man, those guys are humming over there with a defensive-minded head coach. It's crazy.
And he took a former head coach, and I can't think of his name now. He was in Arizona as the head coach with Kyler Murray. He's his OC now. So he went and got
Kingsbury? Is that Cliff Kingsbury?
Bingo. Yep. He went and got one of the young, bright offensive minds, a fresh out of being a head coach and that experience, and plugged him right into the offense and said, hey, you take care of that. I've got the defense. Let's roll. And it's just popping. But the point was, like, imagine if we had signed a Bobby Wagner or a Blake Cashman, and he's in the middle with Quay, or let's say let's say that Blake Cashman and or Bobby Wagner along with Edgerrin Cooper outplay Quay. Now Quay's a rotational guy. Look how you improve the room without cutting bait. And then if something happens, you get banged up like Edgerrin Cooper going down, Quay steps in as the backup. You love your shot as a backup there. And also that's going to breed competition. You know what I'm saying? So
Quay's a first-round draft pick, and, you know,
that's it.
That's what it is.
Yep. And who knows? You might have brung Bobby Wagner in or a Blake Cashman in, and Quay Walker smoked their ass in camp and ends up winning the job. And it's like, that's what you're wanting, that competition. But it's the same thing with Josh Myers. It's not the rag on Josh Myers. And I know he's had a bad year in his personal life, losing his father. And there's so many things. I couldn't imagine trying to go out there on Sunday and trying to play a game. Like when my brother passed away this year, it was everything in me to get out of bed in the morning. So I couldn't imagine handling that pressure. This isn't me going, Josh Myers is a bad person or a bad football player. You got to call it like you see it. But there was no competition brought in for Josh Myers. Yep. And we've seen it as a glaring need.
Well, there was that 5 minutes they tried Sean Ryan at center during camp. There was, I guess that was competition. Everybody covering the team was like, this is not a competition. Like they're going through the motions with that to please a fan base or please the public, whatever. But anyway, Josh, I get the position though, right? Like as an organization, you're telling your guys, hey, you're the guy. We have faith in you. You're the guy. And that says something, like you believe in your players. But at what point does it become a negative? You know what I mean? When you're not bringing in competition and you have full faith in, so many guys, and then they're not executing, what do you do? Right. You put yourself in a position where now you don't have other options.
Yeah. For those of you listening on the pod, that's going to do it for hour one. We will see you on the other side for hour two. We appreciate y'all.